This is DrClyde, and we're now launching into the first of 6 steps in the metabolic method. In this first step, I want to show you the end result and then launch into a bit of my personal story. Think about your journey, and how it equates to everyone's journey, including the journey of the research community and the medical community over decades and centuries and millennia, in figuring out how to converge the components of our physiology, both physical and psychological, to optimize our health, and not just to avoid medications and live longer, even if quality of life is decreasing, but increasing health span, not just lifespan, pushing to a level of wellness, not just health where we're avoiding medications, but wellness where we're thriving. This really stems from at the cellular level for cellular vitality, and then expands from there into organ system vitality, and then to the whole organism, meaning yourself. So where we're going to end up is here, putting together what you feel, based on our conversation, are the most likely half dozen factors that could potentially be metabolic gaps, where the top 3 are the most likely to be issues. And by ranking them by difficulty, you can add together what you think is most likely versus how difficult those might be to get a numerical sum that can rank in order what is most likely to not just facilitate and nourish, but drive your metabolic rate. So this journey started for me, really in the womb. I was born underweight. My older and younger brothers were not. It was a much tougher pregnancy for my mom with me, which resulted in a lower metabolism and this drive to eat and increased body fat, issues that neither of my brothers had, either older or younger. So you can't just argue, well, your mom was a little older there, or maybe this is a genetic issue. So I kind of did my own personal experiment already in the womb, and then, of course, throughout life, where I'm acting as my own personal guinea pig to figure out, what am I doing wrong nutritionally? What am I doing wrong with exercise? And it really came to a head, right? So I was overweight throughout my childhood, as an adolescent and an adult. When I got to the USS Carl Vinson, the nuclear engineering program, and the doctor said to me at the medical check-in, "You're obese, and you have over 300 cholesterol, and you've got high blood pressure, and we need to figure out which and how much medications to put you on." This was the first time in my life where I took my physiological situation, which I didn't think of yet as my metabolism at that time, as serious, and hearing this information from a doctor as data as opposed to judgment. So I was finally ready and willing to hear that there was an issue, and taking it seriously and taking action on that. When I asked the doctor, what can I do about it? His face kind of crunched up into a question mark. Well, maybe do a little more cardio as opposed to just powerlifting, and find a good book on nutrition. And I said, well, maybe a few tips on how to start that. Well, maybe eat less fats. I mean, he really didn't know what to say. And of course, we all know, and I have friends who are medical doctors, that there's not much discussion of nutrition and wellness and metabolism in medical school, or in many of the streams of education as an undergraduate or in graduate school. So this was really the turning point for me that launched me consciously in the direction of, I need to solve this, right? Just eating healthier and exercising more isn't getting it done. Well, when we pulled into port, I went to a bookstore and I saw all these different books. And here I put these vertical lines to kind of segregate out the ones that are either higher in protein or trying to give you macronutrient ratios, as opposed to the middle, where we're talking more about just the glucose piece and how fast stuff digests and insulin sensitivity. And then off to the right, where we're counting calories and just trying to do restriction and thinking about the psychological component often ties into that, because a roller coastering blood sugar or a chronically low blood sugar from not eating enough, so either processed food or not eating enough in general, can tie into a drive for food that can oftentimes feel like or exacerbate a deranged emotional relationship with food. And I've experienced that for the majority of my life until I finally started to put together the different components that go into our metabolism. And that really culminated in terms of my research with Narman Naber and Roger Cook at UCSF, biochemistry, biophysics, looking at how the body shuts down in response to a large gap between receiving not enough of what it needs. So I think of that as a metabolic gap. So this wouldn't just apply to too big a gap in calories between what your body needs and what it receives, but also sleep, which is the foundation of protein production because of gene expression, as the first step towards health, as a step towards wellness, or stress management, since stress hormones break down lean tissue and fight against the benefits of all the other things that you're doing right. So since leaving the Navy, that's when I got my PhD in chemistry at Stanford with Richard Zare, looking at mechanisms of nerve signaling at the synapse. And we did that with models of synaptic vesicle fusion. And it's when I graduated with my PhD in chemistry in 2002 that I started teaching both at Stanford and soon thereafter at Stanford. So I'm over 20 years into that. You can see from this slide in front of you that at first it really was a disconnected attempt to understand nutrition and movement separately before, in the last decade, this finally converged in my mind to how they interact with each other. And in addition, how stress and sleep play into how these things coordinate to drive our metabolism. And what I've learned is that if you're going to really simplify the system down to its minimal basics to keep it doable in an everyday busy person's life where there's so many priorities on our plate day after day after day, you can boil it down to skeletal muscle, which has the largest response to raising and lowering our metabolism in response to our lifestyle choices. The brain's going to burn over 500 calories a day, no matter what you do. The heart's going to burn a couple hundred or more calories per day, no matter what you do, right? And elevating how many calories your lungs or kidneys, intestines, and other vital organs are increasing your metabolism, that's really a diminishing return. There's only so much that you can do there. But with skeletal muscle, you can raise its metabolic rate literally by 3 orders of magnitude, or with excessive dieting and sedentary lifestyle, lowering it by that amount. And so here on this slide, I'm showing how with the peak intensity, like with a sprint or a burst or a plyometric movement, your muscle fibers can get to the same metabolic rate as neurons in your brain. There's no other cells in your body that can come anywhere near close to that. And with movement throughout the day, about 10 times lower metabolic rate, which is already very high. So just moving throughout the day can burn 500 to 1,000 calories more than what you would have during a caloric restriction and being sedentary. And then at rest, muscles will keep idling unless there's a large metabolic gap or a break in your metabolic flow, in your lifestyle choices, in which case the muscle is more likely to go into the super relaxed state, where the difference, and I describe this in the metabolic exercise mini course, is you can think of it as your car idling at a stop sign or red light, as opposed to pulling the key out of the ignition where it completely shuts down. And the difference between those two can be as much as 1,000 calories per day. So this underlies in a major way the dynamic range of our metabolic rate. So if you're cutting too many calories and not losing weight, this can explain why. The key gets pulled out of the ignition, the engine shuts down in order to conserve calories, because the gap between what your body needs and what it's getting, and that gap will get larger from exercise also, right? The demand goes up, and if the supply is going down at the same time, because you're doing both at the same time, then the key gets pulled out of the ignition, and you can end up realizing only a very small amount of the goal that you were after to begin with these efforts. And so to try to start to wrap our minds around what is happening in the body so that we can think about how to intervene in a minimalistic way. so that we see the smallest, most efficient interventions, so that with 10-minute efforts or adding one thing to our nutrition, or pulling out a little bit of something, or focusing on our sleep a little bit more, what is it for you that is going to be the most important in driving that metabolic flow? I've had students ask me, well, why didn't you ever tell us what's the most important? It's because different people have different metabolic gaps. Whatever's wrong with your neighbor's car might not be the same as what's wrong with your car. Maybe they have a flat tire and your spark plugs need to be replaced. So what's most important for them is different than for you, for each of your cars to be maximally efficient. Well, deep quality sleep increases the rate of DNA gene expression into RNA, which is then read by ribosomes, the machinery that assemble amino acids into new protein based on your nutrition. And movement accelerates these processes, and stress slows down these processes. So the question is, what are you limited in? What are you, not someone else or the author of some book you just read, limited in? And this can even change from day to day, right? On some days, if you have a little bit of a breakfast and you're doing a walk, then those are not your limiters. But then on other days, you might not be doing those things, or on those days, it is your limiter. This brings us to step 2. What are those levers, and how can we approach them in a systematic way?